broader set of trusted trade partners, and we're meeting here in San Francisco, the Asia Pacific Economic Conference, and we have a broad range of trade partners.
Let me talk about cultivating trust among those trusted partners. I know that the Biden administration has made some moves in the name of national security that China takes issue with. Like, I'm talking about restrictions on U.S. investment in certain Chinese tech sectors, prohibiting the export of certain tech goods to China, tariffs on imported Chinese goods, sanctions on Chinese firms. How do you explain those decisions to Chinese leaders when they are accusing the U.S. of trying to stifle their economic growth?
Well, I think that's a very important issue, and I made clear in my conversations with my counterpart, Vice Premier He, that we are not trying to stifle China's economic progress. And as the President and I have both said, we think greater income and growth in China is good for the globe and good for the United States as well. But we will take actions to protect our national security. And when we do that, we will try to target them narrowly so that we're not imposing broad harm on China's economy.
Okay, so then, if I may, in the last minute we have left, so then what are areas of economic cooperation that China and the U.S. have agreed upon?
That's very important. We realize that for the sake of the globe, we need to work together. We have agreed to do that with respect to economic growth, the impact of our economies on the entire global outlook, financial stability, regulatory issues, climate and debt problems in low-income countries. Those are all areas we've agreed to work together on.
That is Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
The holidays are approaching, and for many people that means hopping on a plane to visit family or friends. Last December, an estimated 2 million Southwest Airlines customers were stranded after a blizzard led to technical problems at the airline. Now, Southwest says it's better prepared to handle severe weather. NPR's Joe Hernandez reports.
Last Christmas Eve, Emily Cornelius was on her way back to Denver after visiting family when she landed in Chicago for a layover and her flight got canceled. She spent the night with a friend, rebooked for a couple days later, then that flight got canceled too. By then, Southwest Airlines was in the midst of a major holiday meltdown. Baggage claims overflowed, customer service lines clogged up, and many would-be flyers were left stuck in the airport.
We either got trapped in the airport, or we are spending money that we don't know if we're going to get back on options to be outside of the airport.
Cornelius ultimately took a Greyhound bus back to Denver, getting there 5 days after she was originally scheduled to be home. Southwest Airlines ended up canceling more than 16,000 flights over a 10-day period last December. A major blizzard snarled travel across the U.S., but as other airlines recovered, Southwest suffered a series of technical setbacks that led to a wave of delays and cancellations. With Thanksgiving and the December holidays fast approaching, the company now says it's ready for the year-end rush. Here's Southwest Airlines Chief Operating Officer Andrew Watterson talking about the December chaos on a recent earnings call.
It weighs heavily on all of us here at Southwest Airlines. We have a lot of pride based on our 50-plus year history. So preparing to prevent something like that from happening again was and is an imperative.
To better prepare for ice and snow, Southwest bought new de-icing trucks and other equipment and increased staff at airports in colder climates. The airline said it also updated its crew scheduling systems after workers who were manually modifying schedules last December got overwhelmed by the flood of cancellations.
They are making a lot of moves to try to get ahead of this for Christmas.
That's Clint Henderson, managing editor of the travel website The Points Guy.
I'm just not sure everything's going to be in place if there's a big meltdown like there was last year.
Still, customers appear ready to fly with Southwest again. The airline says it has a higher percentage of seats booked for this December's holiday period than it did last year. Henderson says many travelers won't hold a grudge against an airline, even if they say otherwise.
Consumers are really price conscious more than they are sort of away from an airline over issues that they've had in the past.
If you are flying for the holidays, Henderson says there are a few things you can do ahead of time to ensure you have a smoother trip. Download your airline's app to your smartphone. It might make rebooking easier. You should also check the weather forecast, Henderson says, and have a backup plan just in case you get stranded. Joe Hernandez, NPR News.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. Climate change is making life more expensive in the U.S. It's making people sick, and it's affecting cultural traditions that Americans hold dear. But fighting climate change also presents opportunities to reshape the country for the better. Those are some of the key findings in a new federal report out today. Alejandra Bovunda from NPR's Climate Desk reports.
The newly released National Climate Assessment says that climate change now touches every region of the U.S., and it's making Americans' lives harder. Here's President Biden announcing the report today at the White House.
Last year alone, natural disasters in America caused $178 billion in damages. They hit everyone, no matter what their circumstances, but they hit the most vulnerable hardest.
That underlying message isn't exactly new. The first assessment detailed the risks from human-driven climate change back in 2000. But this new report comes at a different moment in the country's relationship with climate change. Climate scientist Katherine Hayhoe is one of the assessment authors.
Many more people these days are worried about climate change. Many more people are aware of the impacts.
One of the starkest impacts is that climate change is making Americans sick.
Climate change is harming human health.
That's Mary Hayden. She's the lead author of a chapter on health.
We tend to focus just on physical health.
For example, extreme heat sends people to the ER. Wildfire smoke causes asthma attacks.
But when we're talking about flooding and displacement, when we're talking about wildfires and displacement, we're talking about people's mental health.
That's especially the case for young people who are having their lives shaped by climate disasters and anxiety about the future. The anxiety partly comes from losing the places, cultures, and traditions that people love most. For example, salmon that tribes have lived with in tandem for thousands of years, they're in trouble from climate change. Recreation, like skiing or ice fishing, that's harder now. But Hayhoe says this assessment also shows the many ways the country can and is choosing a better future.
You avoid, there's a benefit to that. And that's just such an encouraging and empowering message that our actions matter, even tenths of a degree matter.
Hayhoe says the upsides to action are huge. Transitioning away from fossil fuels would save Americans a lot of money. Less warming means fewer billion-dollar disasters. It also means less work hours lost to extreme heat and fewer ER visits from wildfire smoke. A lot of climate solutions can also help with other problems. Air pollution, for example. Having fewer coal-burning power plants or diesel trucks means cleaner air. And here's an example from Ali Zaidi. He's the climate advisor for the White House.
A product of our racist housing policy of the past. Redlined communities today have more pavement and fewer trees, and so it's literally hotter there. Folks feel it more in their bodies because of that historic injustice.
So planting trees in formerly redlined neighborhoods is partly a climate solution. It's also a way to make up for long-standing environmental injustices. Climate change is harder on poor people, people of color, and marginalized groups. That's a powerful new theme in the National Climate Assessment. But the report also says that climate change gives the country an opportunity to rethink the status quo and maybe make life better for a lot of Americans. Alejandra Bovunda, NPR News.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Supporting WHYY, The Quadrangle, a Sunrise Senior Living community in Haverford, where 65-plus seniors are active, independent, and lifelong learners. You can discover this inclusive and engaged independent living community by visiting thequadrangleccrc.com.
Supporting WHYY, Art and Theater Company presents What the Constitution Means to Me. 15-year-old Heidi Schreck earned her college tuition and developed a deep love of the Constitution by winning debate competitions around the country. In this hopeful, heartfelt, and endearingly funny play, Schreck reimagines how this living document affected her past and how it will shape the next generations of American women. On stage October 26th through December 10th. For tickets, artandtheater.org.
And this is WHYY. I'm Matt Gillum, happy to have your company for All Things Considered on this Tuesday. Coming up for us, we get into the 5 o'clock hour of the program. President Biden is going to hold his first in-person meeting with China's leader Xi Jinping in San Francisco tomorrow. We will have a preview of just what could be on the agenda as the two world leaders come together.
It's the perfect time to become a WHYY member. Seasons 1 through 6 of Downton Abbey are now available on Passport, and as a member benefit, you get access. Go to WHYY.org/donate and look for the Passport option when you become a member today.
On the next Fresh Air, how much influence does Fox News have now? I talk with media reporter Brian Stelter. He's written a second book about Fox called Network of Lies, the epic saga of Fox News, Donald Trump, and the battle for American democracy. It's about Fox in the days and years after January 6th. Join us.
Tonight at 7 on WHYY FM.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. In the political conversation about trans youth rights, sports teams have been a major focus. Nearly half of U.S. states ban transgender youth from competing on sports teams that fit their gender identity. People who support restrictions on trans athletes often say they are protecting girls' sports by keeping trans girls from playing. But the same restrictions can also affect transmasculine athletes. NPR's Embedded podcast has a new series about trans youth called All the Only Ones. It includes the story of a teenage athlete from Ohio who feels forced to sacrifice a part of himself in order to keep playing his sport. Here's host Lane Kaplan-Levinson.